might not get to come, might not get to interact and find out what's going on at the county. So at this juncture, I would just welcome anybody who's got comments, questions, concerns about anything specific or in general to let us know what they are, and maybe we can answer those for you.
If you want it, just a little break, if you want your comments, make sure they're recorded. Since this is actually a town hall session, you can come forward, and I think the commission would like to know your name and everything, and you can come forward and actually, if you want to make sure it's recorded, provide comments from the table, or if the commissioners choose, they can just listen to you out there, whatever they feel is comfortable. So.
And also, I would like to mention that we have with us Laura Schabold, who is our county administrator, and Jane Mercer, who takes care of special projects and grants and has been working very hard specifically on economic development grants, which were very exciting. We had a session where we approved some of those today, or semi-approved some of those today. But City Manager Meeker, I want to say thank you for vetting this meeting. You probably spent more time making sure that this was going to come together than if President Obama came to town and you had to do a whole lot of preparation work. So you're getting your money's worth. This woman spent a lot of time making sure this thing was going to be appropriate and approved by your council members. So anybody have any questions or comments on any particular issue?
I know some of the things that we had scheduled to discuss, because they do impact all of Yamhill County, and specifically McMinnville, because you are the largest city in our county, and the bypass has been a significant issue at every level of government, all the way up to the federal level. As some of you may or may not know, the bypass, the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, was included in the FAST Act as a critical corridor. So even at the federal level, they're aware of how important that is to Yamhill County and the citizens of all of the state of Oregon. I see Dave Hageberg here in the audience. You know, if he were to bill us for the hours he's put into this, that check would cover the cost of building that bypass. So. But no, Dave.
Just use that money for homeless projects.
Okay, very good, Dave. But no, it's because of citizens like Dave who really see a need, see something that has to be done, and they go out and they don't take no for an answer. They keep charging. I know after, I think somewhere around 28 years, I'd start wearing down, but Dave hasn't. He's already scheduled me to go off to a couple of meetings at OTC, Eugene, and I don't know where else you're taking me, Dave, but it's that kind of energy, that kind of desire to see things done, not because it's for Dave, but it's for the citizens of Yamhill County. So thank you, Dave. But to get back to the bypass, because again of Dave's work, we did get the Oregon Transportation Commission, the OTC, to get purchasing right-of-way east of Newburgh into the STIP for 2016. And that was very, very critical to the continuation of the bypass project. We do have a lot of other issues, but if we had not gotten that piece done, the right-of-way had a really strong opportunity of going away because of a sale and proposed building. So again, this has been something that's taken a lot of effort on a lot of people's part. The current section 1 of the bypass is it's on schedule, completion winter of 2017, and we're actually going to have some savings on the project that are going into the right-of-way purchase. So again, that's I know your mayor joined several other jurisdiction leaders to, we went up to Hood River to stomp and yell and scream, and we didn't have to. The OTC was quite receptive to our concerns. So anyway, this is something that's critical to Yamhill County from the transportation standpoint. We have to be able to get goods and services into and out of our county. And I convened an economic development group 2 weeks ago here in McMinnville to begin the process of really focusing on how we're going to use that. And there were 3 issues that came to the surface in how we can build up economic development in Yamhill County. And the number 1 thing that came to surface was transportation. Number 2 was affordable housing. And number 3 was workforce development. So I don't know where you might go anywhere in the state and hold an economic development meeting that those 3 issues won't be considered as critical. So we are working tirelessly to make sure that bypass gets done and gets done right. The affordable housing is something that we all face. You have a builder here on the podium that understands how difficult it is to find land to build on. We need to really look long and hard at our land use rules and regulations because they are creating a real problem for finding buildable land. So that's an issue that won't be resolved here at the local level, but it's something that we have to be aware of, and we can't sit back and just let things happen to us. We've got to step out and make things happen. Workforce development is absolutely critical. If you're going to, and Jody, I see her in the audience, she does a fantastic job for the city of McMinnville. I don't know how many people are aware of the hours that she spends bringing people here, encouraging people to come and visit with us. But one of the things they ask is, do you have the people I need if I bring my company here? And so we have to have a much stronger relationship with our schools. I know we are getting ready to build a new public works building out on Lafayette Avenue. The old one's coming down. We're going to raise a new one on that footprint. And I've been working for several months now with Holly Nelson out at Chemeketa. And once you see the plan for the new building, you'll see that there are 2 bays at the far end of the building that are designated Chemeketa classrooms. And we are going to have a diesel mechanic program that is going to be housed in our new facility. So there's where government and school agencies can pool their resources, and there's no sense Chemeketa building a facility like that when we're going to build a new one anyway. So that's going to be happening. We probably not till the fall of 18, but that we'll have the people in place. But diesel mechanics they're critically short right now as we're having aging out of our in the farm. We're in our agricultural community, and our farmers need people to work on their equipment. And so hopefully we're going to take our young people in this community and train them to do things that'll keep them right here in this community, and they can make a darn good living at it. So that's just an example of what's happening. Mary alluded to a meeting we had earlier today where we were fortunate enough to have 4 fantastic grant requests brought to the county. As some of you may be aware, the lottery funds are distributed out to counties for economic development. And every county has a different way of distributing those. The county commissioners just pick projects and fund them. And in Yamhill County, we've structured a grant program we have small grants The application period runs from January to March, and those are capped at $10,000. You can request up to $10,000. And we've had varying responses from, I think the first year about 11, or no, not that many. Second year, we went up to 33, and last year, I think we had 20. But we've given out a substantial amount of money to small companies who just need that little bit to help them buy maybe a new cash register, things like that. But it helps these companies to get the funding they need. Today, we funded 4 grants that totaled $164,000, and I think will bring probably within 3 years will represent somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 jobs, 35 family wage jobs. And with a little bit of impetus, we're going to see some expanding businesses that will, they're just on the threshold of where they're going to go. So your county is working hard to try and make some of these things happen. And if any of you have some ideas, some suggestions, some thoughts on things we might do, things we might do better, or things we're doing wrong, we need to hear about it, because, we sit there and we think, well, this is the way to go, and we don't have all the answers. So that's why we're having these town hall meetings. We want to hear from you, and as Mary indicated, every town we've held them in, a problem has surfaced that we were able to address almost immediately, and so it makes the cities understand that we really do care when we come. So thank you for letting me go on and on, but I did want to make sure that these points get made and that you understand that a lot of work's being done by a lot of people, and we're excited about it.
So what we've done is we're going to have a joint work session with the city, and a lot of the topics that Commissioner Primozic mentioned were on that. So there are issues and perhaps nuances that the city might want to, throw into the discussion. But the bigger picture is that if we can increase and we can expand the communication at the city level to the counties, then I just remember Mayor Bob saying at one point, when there was a concern about what was going on with a change in the bypass, the plans of the bypass, and he said to me one time as he was leaving a commissioners meeting, he turned to me and he said, if we could just have had a conversation, all this wouldn't have happened. He says, wouldn't it be great if we all just kind of met once in a while? So that's when I said, well, let's try to do a city every month or so, and it's made an enormous difference, because without that communication, we're just flying blind. So if there are no comments specifically in relation to bigger elements that the county deals with, maybe, Mr. Mayor, do you want to move on to the work session?
Yeah, we can move on to our regular agenda. Our agenda technically does not start until 7 p.m. and it's 6:25, but I think since we do not have a public hearing tonight or any kind of a land use hearing, I think we could move on. We have 2 small things on our agenda before we hit our joint meeting, and we can go ahead and cover those items. And
have we actually opened it up for public comment yet? I haven't.
We're in a town hall. It's a county's town hall, so we haven't opened.
That's
I mean,
what
you can say, since it's a town hall, you can talk about anything you want right now.
I mean, of the public, were they going to say anything?
This is the county. It's a town hall, the county. And I think Mary and Stan have already asked if anybody had anything they wanted to add as far as the county goes.
Did you have a question? No? Nobody has any questions about what's going on at the county? Yes, ma'am.
Once we get into the joint work meeting, then
Hi there. My name is Kathy Neary, and I'm the pastor at the McMinnville Cooperative Ministries. And this is more of a comment. You just mentioned communicating with each other. And next Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the co-op, we are hosting a forum that Chief Scales and Sheriff Svensson have agreed to come to so that the community can talk with our police force leaders and just see what issues are out there and learn a little bit more about policing in this area. We've all gone through a really horrible week, and I really feel like if we have these open conversations between people, it might really help to move us forward in our relationships between the citizens and the police force. So that will be next Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the co-op, and everyone here is welcome to attend. It is open to the public. I do have just one comment, and that is, in the last couple of city council meetings, the issue about abandoned properties here in town has been raised, that their squatters are occupying these properties. Someone asked me a question, and I don't know if it was answered in either of the meetings. If these properties are bank-owned, are the banks responsible to keep them safe or secure? And I honestly don't know.
What I will do is, even though we're in our town hall session, I think we can gladly answer that question now. And I think what the city's doing and the research that we've done, I will turn it over to David Kosh, our city attorney, and he can give you a little update on some of the answers to some of those questions. So David, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The owner of the property is ultimately responsible for the condition of that property, and if the property is in violation of the municipal code related to weeds or condition of the property, that owner is ultimately the one that the city would go after for code enforcement actions. The particular property in question, although we had heard citizen comment that it was in foreclosure or may have been bank-owned, the information that we've been able to determine through the county's own records is that it is actually not owned by the bank. It may be in a foreclosure process, but the ownership records still indicate that it is owned by one of the occupants of that home. So we'll be taking, whatever action we'll be taking against the owner of the property.
David, can you also address maybe our discussions at the last council meeting regarding future activity and what the council is looking at that you and the city manager are working on?
Yeah, well, I'll say at this point is we're preparing to have a presentation for you at the July 26th meeting. We're going through a review of the code right now to determine what tools we have available to us and whether they're adequate to deal with the couple of properties, and really it's only a couple of properties that we've identified that actually fit within that kind of nuisance property category for what's been talked about as call drivers for the police department and complaints from neighbors. That doesn't mean that those are the only abandoned properties in town, but in terms of ones that have become call drivers and potential nuisances within the neighborhood, it's a smaller number than perhaps we thought. So we'll be coming to you on the 26th with a more thoughtful staff report on what approach we recommend the council may want to take.
Okay, thank you, David. So hopefully that'll answer your question. If you'd like, you're definitely welcome back on the 26th and listen to that conversation regarding the actual formal action the city's going to take. So, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you if you have anything.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to comment. Pastor Neary, I wanted to thank you not only for the work that you're doing at the co-op, talk about being in the trenches, but when you and I had a conversation about how can the county help with some of you were actually dealing with people who were in mental health crisis, and you were trying to figure out how do I get them services and where do I go and how do I do it. And that's been one of the things that I think we really have to get the word out on how our different systems work. Whether it's DHS or whether it's what goes on in community corrections or mental health services, it's really hard to navigate those systems, and you found that out firsthand. In your meeting with Silas Halloran-Steiner, who's our Director of Health and Human Services, he was able to, I understand, give you a better idea of what you could be expected to do, and then what some of the services available, because to ask somebody to be shouldering that, a private citizen to be shouldering that, when that is the work of, an awful lot of people, and it was just too much. So thank you for following that through and for getting the answers and for continuing to deal with that situation. I'd heard somebody talk basically about the homeless situation, and it is not something that, one size fits all and it's going to be push this button and the whole thing's going to fix. And that's not going to happen. I think we have a number of people in this room who can address that more specifically. But I think at the county level, I want to be able to say that the county is dealing with it from a number of different issues, different perspectives. When you have people who are in jail dealing with, they've been incarcerated, they also have addiction and mental health problems, if they're not led through the system of how to get services, they're going to be in that revolving door in the average of 10 to 15 days, be back out on the streets, and now it's going to be even worse. So I just had a meeting today with our sheriff and community corrections and with Health and Human Services about how we can make it easier for families and people who are incarcerated to figure out how not to go back out and wind up being on the street. So a number of different ways that we're dealing with it, and we'll talk a little bit later on about the funding and what Dave Hageberg and Elise Hui is here, who from Housing Authority, and they're doing the lion's share of some of the work in that respect, dealing with Section 8 and different things like that. So thank you for what you're doing, because I've been over there and it's not an easy situation.
You should have said up front.
I need the exercise. Thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. And it has been my experience at the co-op that our different agencies in town are doing a wonderful job at helping as many of the homeless people as they can. What we see right now at the co-op are smaller population of people who just absolutely fall through the cracks. They don't meet the specific criterion for receiving the services that are available. And most importantly, they are completely alone. So they have no family or support system to walk them through the services that we do have. I know you mentioned trying to help families with their members to navigate the systems that we have and help them to break this cycle of incarceration and then release. What we're seeing are these people who literally have no one. And so when we get service people out to talk with the folks, they are hampered by the fact that we have incredibly low standards for competence for these people. So I can look at them and say they are unable to care for themselves. But according to the standards that we have, that the service agencies have to abide by, they look at the same people and say, no, they're not a danger to themselves or others. And that's where we're seeing the greatest tension right now. For example, we have someone staying on our property right now, 69 years old, somewhat mentally challenged, diabetic, has no money, no support system. But he's been evaluated and deemed competent to take care of himself and also refused services. So we're left with helping him as best we can, but that's not very much. So this is kind of a philosophical comment here, that we do have this population of people that we're finding incredibly hard to help. And even with the social services that we have right now, that help is just not there for various reasons. I don't have an answer to what we're going to do.
Well, there are, as you mentioned, very strict guidelines about what someone can do to hold a person. In other words, we have to grant certain authority to different people to have what's called a director's hold on someone, and that is whether or not they're considered to be, mentally incompetent or a danger to themselves or others. And you've got to weigh the civil rights of the person and the rights of the community for the public safety element. So there is that, as you said, there's that fine line between how do I force services on you. I know, and I'm sure Jeff Sargent can address this because he's had to deal with it. I remember calling over there saying, well, there's a woman who actually was spending a lot of time in your parking lot, and I met with her at right before Thanksgiving, and I said, okay, it's 1 o'clock. I think YCAP's closed. What do we do? And you can go to, Seawish was, you could go to this, well, I can't because of my dog. I said, I'll take your dog. And she said, no. So it was like, I couldn't force her to go in there because it was freezing cold. But I also know that at YCAP, if you call them, they'll send somebody out with a tent and a sleeping bag and food and water and go looking for them, because that's what they did in this particular case. So every effort is being made, but when someone doesn't want it, you can't push it.
No. But it is an issue we need to deal with, because we're going to be seeing people fall through the cracks to the point of dying on the streets, and that is something none of us want to see. So, as I said, it's kind of a philosophical discussion. Where do we start to change the system we have to be able to help people who need that help and who don't have any other outside support? So, yeah.
I think part of the town hall, just a comment on that. I've been doing some research. I know we have a lot of it is based in McMinnville and Newburgh, most of McMinnville, because we have the largest per capita population of homeless people in McMinnville, and trying to figure out what works as successes and what works, what doesn't work and what works. I ran across a program, I believe it was in North Carolina or South Carolina, where the state, of course, then you were another level of government, but the cities and the counties in townships in North Carolina, they got together and they actually came up with a system. Now, whether it worked in Yamhill County, I don't know, or whether it worked in McMinnville, I don't know, that they had, some people were government employees, some were from the faith-based community, that what they would do is they would assign a advocate to that particular person, and this advocate, they would actually go with them, like the single person you're talking about, Pastor, and walk them through the whole system, go with them to their appointments, make sure they get to where they need to be. And they found within 2 years that their services improved like 37% within 2 years, because they actually had somebody who knew how to circumvent or get around the whole thing. Because let's face it, you deal with the county, you deal with the city, you deal with the state, and every department in the county, and every department in the city, and every department in the state, that there is a need for people that actually know the inside out. And I think that's one thing from a societal standpoint that we can do much better, is actually give people like that the potential of having an advocate whose responsibility is to walk them through and make sure that they get through the process and understand. So that's just a comment.
Well, Mr. Hageberg is here, and would this be an appropriate time to talk about the homeless?
Why don't we wait? Let's go into since we have that on our schedule, let's go to our joint work session, and then we can address all that during our joint work session. Since it is a city-county joint work session. So what I would suggest, as soon as the commissioners are done, go ahead, David.
Mr. Mayor, I would advise, since this is part of the agenda that was advertised for the 7 o'clock meeting, that while you could start the meeting after 7 o'clock, I'd advise against starting that particular meeting prior to 7 o'clock. So as a part of the town hall, if you want to continue that discussion, I think that would be fine.
Okay, and then
But not to officially start the regular meeting until the advertised hour of 7 o'clock.
Okay, and then we can review or recap anything. So
Very good.
that being said, what I would like to do, I won't call us to order then for our joint work session, and I will not have the commission chair call them to order for the joint work session. But we had 4 things on our joint work session that is part of the town hall we can discuss, and we can continue the discussion if we like regarding the homeless update, and that's the overview of the city, county, and local organization efforts, and we'll do this as part of the the county-led town hall. Then we can come back as part of our official agenda and do a recap on what was discussed in the town hall. That way, that will take us, we can get through some of those things to take us to our regular meeting time, so.
Sure.
So if we want to, I know the commission chair was going to talk or had some more information on the homeless, so do we want to just start? Let's go on to that one.
Yeah, I know. I spoke to Jeff Sargent when we were preparing to talk about how the county is approaching this, and he gave me some numbers, and I believe it was 1,709 people who are considered homeless, and that includes people who are couch surfing, and that includes people, in your point-in-time count through YCAP.
1,200.
About how many?
About 1,200.
1,200, and then include the other 500 who are precariously housed, as you call them, that HUD doesn't think of as being homeless. And you've got a number of people that you've got people living on the streets and various other other places which are not considered homes. So I know that Dave Hageberg has and Kay Sawyer is here. And I have great admiration because if you want to talk about what one person can do to make a difference, Kay, as a dispatcher at YCOM years ago, used to get calls about people who were sleeping in parking lots and think, what do we do? Take up a collection from the police and the firemen that she worked with and would get hotel rooms for people so that they wouldn't have to sleep on the streets. And that grew into the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission, which has become a huge force in this county for helping people get off the streets, get clean and sober, and live productive lives. Team that up with Dave Hageberg, who is perhaps one of the most significant forces for change in our community. And I know Elise has been working on this as well, to put together a plan which would be a huge game changer, and that is by expanding the number of beds at the Gospel Mission. So if Dave or Kay or Elise want to talk about where you're at so far, but I know the county has funded to $150,000 toward this effort to expand the number of beds at the Gospel Rescue Mission.
So Dave, the county and as part of the work session, you're recognized. I think Mary did a good job of introducing us.
Well, thank you. For the record, my name is Dave Hageberg. I'm delighted to be here. Commissioner, Chair Starrett, Commissioner Brumazich, Mayor Olson, and all the members of the City Council. To start with, the person who ought to be up here telling you what's happening in terms of on the ground is Kay Sawyer, and I want to tell you what an incredible human being she is and the commitment she has made to this whole cause. And the mission is there in a large part because of Kay Sawyer. I'm just fortunate enough to be able to give her a helping hand when she needs it. But if you've been by lately, you've seen that the modular that the school district donated is there. It's in place. It's connected. They're busy working on the contracts to put in the sprinkling systems to make that come together and to do the renovation inside to provide the kind of facility that you'd want and to get it connected to city services. So that's happened. Now, let's talk for a moment about this incredible partnership, because this is a partnership. It's a partnership of the school district. Yamhill County is a big player in it. The city of McMinnville and their departments have become a very important part of this partnership in the time we've spent talking about it. But let's also talk about the mission and the McMinnville Area Community Foundation. And then there's the faith-based community. You've heard from one tonight, but the other church members, and then the private citizens who have come together that said, we're going to make a difference and we're going to have something happen. And I thought you'd be interested. The project is in three phases. The first is the shelter, and the money has been raised, that plus pledges, to pay for the land and that building and its renovation and its placement and its staffing for 2 years. There's also money raised, $150,000 is dedicated by the county to the men's facility, which is phase 2, and so that will go into that phase, and we've already paid for the $50,000 of cleanup and land renovation costs to make that happen. So phase 2's really got about $200,000 invested in out of about $700. Well, when you sit down and think about what an incredible accomplishment so far, what we are right now today in terms of funding is the the fact that we've had cash contributions of $231,000 plus. That's money I actually received. We have pledges of another $298,500 plus, which is a total of $529,000, almost $530,000. When you add to that in kind, such as the school district and so many contractors that are contributing a part of their work and not charging for it, and the things that they bring to the project, and some church commitments, we're at $598,000 out of about $1,450,000 budget, and that's pretty incredible, and that's been in a very short period of time. So we have a number of people, as you know, working on making it happen. But this whole project will end up with the facility with a total bed capacity of 65 beds. Now that's going from 17 to 65. That's an enormous growth, and it's a huge accomplishment in a short period of time. And I just want to all remind us that just building the buildings won't make this project ultimately a success. What will make it a success is the community continuing to partner with the mission on this very important part of the project, providing facilities to help the homeless. That 60% of the people that are maybe homeless once in their life, bad things happen. They could be young, they could be old, they're school children, they're veterans, and they really, you can make a difference in their lives immediately. And so as a community, as a city and a county and a school district and the rest of the community, this is a pretty incredible thing that we've done while we've watched other communities talk and not make a move. And so I want you to know on behalf of everybody in this project that it's happened, and the leaders in this that have really made it come together and brought the community together are the school district, the county, and the city. And that is as it should be, and we couldn't do this without all of you, and this is really special. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Dave, you were talking about the funding for 2 years. What's the plan going forward to continue to fund it?
Excellent question. You know, what we knew is as you're raising a lot of money to put in facilities and you increase staff significantly, that's a significant cost. As you go forward, then the plan is that the mission needs time to grow its annual funding to meet those needs of operations as you go forward, and that will become a part of, they've stepped up their programs for their annual funding and their solicitations. I've actually been talking to 2 or 3 people that, if I told you, are incredible individuals that know how to put together annual events to raise money and other kinds of programs to make sure. The other thing I think, Commissioner, is that you have a person who, I mean, we've got individuals who have written checks already for $50,000. Well, let me tell you, when people make that kind of a commitment to a project like this, they won't forget it. That was their down payment on the facility. Those are the type of people with the resources that will continue to be there and to continue to help say, you know what, I have the money to make a difference on an annual basis. They won't forget that they've made a huge investment. And so that's all part of it. You know, it's always a little bit on the come because you have to say, will we get the budget ready? But if you can raise the kind of money that we're committed to raising and it's coming in, I think we can make this thing happen from an operational standpoint without it becoming a burden like so many programs are.
There's a lot of conversation about a facility that will also provide access to all of the services that are currently available. What type of connectivity is the mission currently providing, and will there be an expansion of that connectivity to all the other services that are available?
Excellent question, and I shouldn't guess.
You knew he was
because they do this, and but
I was going to try to get out of this.
Nice try, Kay.
Nice try.
I'm familiar with the facility and then the presentation that's been put out there, and we are one of the resources that they will be using. If you're referring to the compass, is that?
I mean, that's one place where that's come up in conversation, but just in, as we've been talking about homelessness for a long time now and talking about ways that we can all be better advocates for the homeless, a piece of information that circulates regularly is that, you have to have access to services. So.
Right, and I agree. I think it's a great idea because when people come into the mission, we have to send them to a whole bunch of different spots just to get whatever need they have. And so this was something that I thought would be a great idea to have. One of the presentations I heard was to have it as like a one-stop shopping center where there was a lot of offices for those resources so that the people could come to one place, get hooked up with whatever resources they needed, and then they could take it from there. And so there would be a representative from each resource. And I think that's very helpful for the homeless community, and especially if you're wanting to see some mentorship and advocates, that would be a good spot for those people also, because then you could hook them up at the time they come in. But we do have some mentoring where we are, and so we can point them in the right direction, but we can't physically go with them because we have to stay. We have a lot of volunteers, and our staff has to pretty much stay in-house at this point. We help them as much as we can, but the other resources we try to partner with, we have YCAP and the Housing Authority and several county agencies we partner with. So we try to make sure that we have contacts and we're able to communicate with them what the needs are for the people that are staying at the mission.
Okay, a thought that I have and an example is like out at the senior center where we have lots of individuals coming in on a ongoing basis. Sometimes we have had success of bringing providers in one day a week so that people can come and know that there will be assistance there, whether, there's just a myriad of people that come in, and I know some of those are providers that see business coming from that, and we're talking more government coming in to provide assistance. But I'm wondering if that could be a thought down the road as we build capacity there of having someone from some of these county, city, state come in on a given day so that people that have needs, they don't have to be all over the place and trying to find transportation to get there, that it might come. I don't know. That's just the thought I have, that long range may be somewhere that we come and bring assistance, training, knowledge to them possibly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we work really close with the VA, the local VA, because they have some resources that are very helpful for, we do see senior citizens come through that they're lost and they don't really know, where to go.
Right.
But we would be more than willing to do that if we knew the time and the day,
Right.
and we could also be there. Because we do set up meetings with different agencies that we can share information and get the word out of what we do and what we need and what help we can provide for them. So that would be great.
So when the VA comes, is within the mission, is there a separate office or a meeting space where that's facilitated to take place, so that if Housing Authority or YCAP or any of the other service or mental health service providers wanted to come in, that would be that possibility, kind of building off of that concept, that there would be a designated space so that the people that are coming through are not having to get around to all of these different areas, which, while they're not terribly far, it would be, it's
Normally
terribly
that's
far
what
by
happens,
foot.
is somebody usually will come to the mission from whatever agency we need to help the person with. So when we build the men's facility, we're going to have extra offices there so we can utilize those for several different things, and that would be included. There was one thought of hoping to have a mentor that's connected to Lutheran services that would do take them by the hand and take them to their appointments and help them as an advocate. And that's something that I'm looking at, to possibly have an office at the mission for that that direct type of thing, because that's something that's really needed.
Thank you.
Anything else on that one? Oh, I have one back there again.
I'm risking bodily harm here by asking, Kay, do you have any idea when the emergency shelter will be open? Sorry.
Well, the shelter, we're kind of in the, still trying to get the water system hooked up and the remodeling done. As time has gone by, there's been many, many delays, and I hate to give out dates anymore, but I'm shooting for winter. But I think the remodeling we can start doing right away. Since the modular is in, we can get the inside to where we need it and everything we need for the inside. So we just need to work with water and light and get the electric and that kind of stuff hooked up. So however long that takes, I don't want to commit to any particular date right now, because I've done that before and it didn't work, so.
Before the snow flies. Promise.
Yeah, before winter. But I will definitely let you know. So. Is that it?
Thank you.
About 5 more minutes we can kill if anybody has anything else, and we'll save the other 3 items then to our joint session. What I'd like to do is, for the county's portion, for the town hall portion, we have about 5 minutes left until we convene our city council meeting at 7, and as part of the city council meeting, we do have our joint session with Yamhill County. So what I'd like to do is actually just take a short break if nobody has any other questions, maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. If you want to get up and walk around, and then what we will do is we'll actually go into our formal city council session. As part of that, we can get into the joint work. We'll call the joint work session to order, and we can talk a little bit about homeless, but then we'll go about those other items that are on our work session. David, does that fit with you? So why don't we take about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and start instead of getting into another subject during the town hall.
I vote yes.
Anyway, we have 1 hour here tonight. Okay, good evening, everybody. We are going to get ready to start our July 12th, 2016 meeting of the McMinnville City Council. And what I'd like to do first is I would like to ask Councilor Hill to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Hill. This is a time as part of our regular meetings that we invite citizens to come to us and provide public comment on anything they'd like to talk about. We do have a couple limitations, though, and it's hard to read, but it's up on your board. If a topic is already on our agenda, we ask you to wait until that agenda item to speak to the council. If the city is currently in a matter of litigation with a party, a firm, or a company, we will not be able to discuss that in open session. If it's regarding a quasi-judicial land use matter such as a zone change, or if it's a matter scheduled for any public hearing at some future date, we will inform you of that and we will not be able to discuss that. And of course, depending on the length of the comments, we always ask that you limit your comments if possible, and that if there's multiple people who would like to comment on the same issue, just please not to repeat anything that the previous person said. So that being said, I'd invite anybody who would like to speak to the council on anything to come forward, state your name for the digital record, and sign in for the hard copy record. So is there anybody who would like to speak to the council on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Hearing none, let me say one more time. Is there anybody who would like to speak to the council on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and we'll move forward. Councilors, as part of our agenda, you were to consider the minutes of the April 12th, 2016 City, County, and regular meetings as part of our consent agenda, and also resolution number 2016-49, and that is authorizing and approving amendments to the loan agreement between the State of Oregon, acting by and through its Department of Transportation, ODOT, and the City of McMinnville, a municipal corporation of the State of Oregon, further known as McMinnville, dated July 1, 2013, referred to as the loan agreement. So, councilors, we have two things on our consent agenda tonight. Is there anything that the councilors would like pulled from our consent agenda for discussion? Or just a question? So, Kevin, you'd like something pulled for discussion?
I think that the resolution 2016-49 should be taken out of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a request that we remove resolution 2016-49 out of the consent agenda. So by Commissioner or Councilor Jeffries. So by that, we will go ahead and remove that, and we will bring it up after our consent agenda. So that leaves our consent agenda just with the minutes of the April 12th, 2016 City Council dinner and regular meetings. Do we have any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the minutes.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Hill. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Menke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we did have a request that we move resolution number 2016-49 from the consent agenda up for discussion by the council. So at this time, before we get into our joint work session, I will open that resolution up for discussion, and I'll turn it over for any questions or comments to Council President Jeffries. So Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. I just felt that given the magnitude of that particular loan agreement, that it should be something that we discuss in a little bit more detail. Looking over the information provided in the packet, it wasn't clear how much money was being transferred over to the Phase 2 part of it. I just wanted to kind of clear the air, make sure that we understand what the commitment is, and yeah, so with that said.
Okay, I think we have somebody that can explain that very well, and he's sitting in the audience tonight. Our Parkway Committee Chair, Yamhill County Parkway Committee Chair and bypass guru. So I'll ask David, and he's already sitting down there. David, if you could state your name again, you've already signed in. And
Mr. Mayor, my name is Dave Hageberg, Chair of the Yamhill County Parkway Committee. Commissioner Chair Stewart, or Starrett rather, and then members of the commission and city council. The question that you ask is, let's go back to just a little bit. Originally in the funding agreement for the first phase, the local entities plus the Confederated Tribes put up $20 million. Of that 20, 16 of it came from the local governmental entities, and of that, McMinnville's share was $3,209,000. And that money was funded by the different entities borrowing the money from the ODOT Infrastructure Bank and entering into this loan agreement that we're talking about. And that money was then pledged as a part of that to be drawn down as the bypass is constructed. The money was drawn against all the different entities and ODOT's money to pay for the project as it was going forward and as you've seen it being built. So as a result of that, what's happened is that the project costs for the first phase from this side of Dundee to Highway 219 ended up being less than were projected in the total cost of the project. And the way the loan agreements were written, the money was drawn down as it is being spent. So ODOT has now said we are comfortable that when we get all done, we will have at least $10.5 million of that original 200 and some million that we won't be spending on this first phase. And that money is about 90% ODOT's money, and it's about 10% money that the local entities wouldn't borrow and wouldn't have to pay off over time. So back to your first question then, McMinnville's share of that is about 20%. So it's somewhere, and I asked ODOT and Tim Potter, it's somewhere between $210,000 and $220,000 of that $3 million of McMinnville's money that wouldn't be spent on the first phase of the project. So the opportunity has come up, as Commissioner Primozic pointed out to you, that the dollars could be used to start to acquire critical right-of-way in the parcels in that piece of the bypass from 219 to Rex Hill. And as you've probably read in the media, a number of those pieces of property have become at risk for development. And in fact, there's one that's been going on right now. Previously, there had been a conversation about a church, but now that's a conversation about another type of a facility. And so ODOT and the Transportation Commission voted to move forward and to put this next phase of the project into the State Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP. And that is an incredible step forward. Without that, you go nowhere. And the Transportation Commission at the meeting in Hood River where Mayor Olson was there, Commissioner Primozic and the other mayors, the Transportation Commission said, we're willing to put it in there. We'll allocate that $10.5 million to begin acquisition of right-of-way, et cetera. But what we want to know is that our local partners who also own a piece of that $10.5 million, that $1+ million, are willing to put their money in also to begin the acquisition of right-of-way and the other things it takes to move that next critical phase forward. And what I would tell you is that when they designed the first phase, the way you'd get from 219 and the bypass where it connects back up to 99W is on Springbrook Road. And so they're going to 3-lane Springbrook Road, and everybody, including ODOT, knows that Springbrook Road is going to fail very soon. It is just literally a Band-Aid that is not going to work very well, but it was the only way they could build first phase and get you up there. So this piece will then replace that impact on Highway 219, on the impact of the project on Springbrook Road. So you say, well, okay, what happens if you don't do it? You will not get anywhere near the total benefit of the bypass if you don't build that next phase. The projections are you'll get a lot of benefit on the truck traffic, but the highway traffic is not a big percentage that will continue to go through Newburgh and Dundee. And so clearly those entities are very strongly in support of it. And I can tell you last Tuesday, I was at the city council meetings for both Dundee and Newburgh, and they unanimously passed using these dollars for that next phase, as has Yamhill County, as has the Confederated Tribe. And then you say, is this a good investment? One of the things we've always worked so hard on this project is to get support from others than us locals, if you will, to get really, truly regional support, and that's what moves projects. And one of the things that happened is that at an MWAC meeting, the Area Commission on Transportation, I made a presentation, and Commissioner Brentano from Marion County was there, and when he heard about the impact of not building the next phase and Springbrook Road plugging up, that meant either a great deal of that traffic is going to get diverted, Commissioner Stair to tell you, possibly onto Wilsonville Road, but across northern Marion County on across 219 across the river. And so Marion County commissioners are very concerned about that, and they unanimously passed resolutions in support of the construction of the next phase of the bypass. Huge to have that support. The Area Commission on Transportation voted unanimously to move this next phase forward and did not start projects and leave them half completed, as so many have criticized. But more importantly, is so that when you've invested so far $3 million, that you'll get your $3,209,000 worth by finishing that next phase. So this is an incredibly important step to making that happen, and you're putting up about $210,000 or $220,000 more dollars into that next phase.
I think, Kevin, one of the questions that I've had some of the citizens ask me, and I think it's important, and Dave did a good job of explaining it, is the savings the city of McMinnville realizes from the first phase does not mean that the city of McMinnville would get a check back at the end of phase one. All it does mean is that we just, our bond, what we borrowed from ODOT's infrastructure bank, we just would never borrow that amount of money.
Which would free up some of our debt service dollars, correct?
At a certain period of time. And my big concern about it is with knowing what is happening to the right-of-way between Springbrook Road and 99W, if ODOT doesn't move forward acquiring that property now, the cost of acquiring that property in the future, that some of it's under a lot of pressure for development, we would never ever be able to acquire that property, so.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think if people start building big buildings, the probability of being able to build that next phase goes down dramatically.
I've discussed this part of the bypass with many of the same people that you've mentioned, and obviously the support's there. I would love to see them put their money where their mouth is a little bit. They give the support. They don't want this project. We don't want the traffic going into their county, but they're seeing a negative impact from this if it doesn't work, and we're seeing a positive impact if it does. And I would love to see them play a bigger part in financing some of this, so that we don't have to be carrying all the weight on this. I mean, McMinnville is quite a distance away from the construction of this bypass, but yet we're one of the largest by per capita. Just the fact of our size, we're giving a great deal of money to this, and no surprise to anyone, we're just like many other cities that are facing a bit of a budget crunch right now. So I'm really cautious about giving them money to this project going forward. I'm supportive of it, and I want to do it. I just want to make sure that we're being very wise about the money that we have, which is quite limited. So, and my second point is, and it sounds like, and please help me to understand this, but the conversation that was had in Hood River, was there any commitment by the cities to give up, to move that portion of the reserves or the budget surplus, I guess, into the phase two? Was that a somewhat of an agreement that the cities would do that? Could you elaborate on that? I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know kind of what happened.
What the individual mayors, commissioners said at that meeting is, if you will put it in the STIP, we will go back to our respective governing bodies and ask them to dedicate those dollars, those savings, to the next phase, and ODOT would then put theirs in. And I think it was made pretty clear to me that ODOT is saying, if you are all really committed and put your money in, we'll put ours in. But if you aren't committed enough, then we'd have to think seriously about ODOT putting its money in. So there was no commitments. Everybody clearly understood that it all had to come back to every governing body for a conversation about it. And so that's what brought it to the different entities to have this discussion.
I appreciate that distinction, because if it was the other way, I would have been pretty upset. So I'm glad that there was not, we weren't making this commitment without having a public discussion about it. So,
and Councilor, I can tell you that every one of the mayors and the commissioner and myself and all of us who have been around public bodies so long, we know better than to make commitments on behalf of entities that can only be made by the respective governing bodies, and so that was clear. But, ODOT was asking, and what they agreed is to come back here and have this discussion as we're having. I would point out one thing about Marion County. When you think about the incredible benefit of what Marion County brings to this is the number of members of the legislature that touch or are involved with Marion County, including the Senate President.
It's true.
And so if the Marion County Commissioners are saying, go build it, that doesn't mean it's going to get built, but that is an enormous amount of public support that we've not had in the past.
I think, Kevin, one of the things that would be interesting, and I'm not so sure, I think maybe Commissioner Primisich or maybe Commissioner Chair Starrett can answer this better. I'm not so sure what the ability of the Marion County Commissioners would be to fund a transportation project outside their jurisdiction would be. I don't know.
Well, I know Commissioner Brentano was really concerned about that and was wondering why he wasn't brought into the discussion about the change on 219. And they felt like they had not been invited to the party. So as far as whether or not they could voluntarily come to the party at this stage of the game, I really don't know how that would work. I don't know.
I don't think so either.
Commissioner Primisich?
And again, that would take an act of their Board of Commissioners, to do that. I don't believe they've been asked, and I don't know the legal ramifications. Spending money, they certainly could authorize that expenditure, but they've got considerable projects within their own county lines. Just, if I might add a point or two, we've spent $250 million to date on a project. The city of McMinnville will have the skin in the game of about $3 million. If we do not move forward, if we don't fund the rest of this, that's like flushing that down the toilet for the benefit we're going to get from phase one. So it's not really a question. The phase two is going to come, and we're going to be asked to do our share of funding on that. And this is a down payment, if you will, on that phase two. And I think it's critical that if we don't really step up now, the cost of phase two is going to grow exponentially. And so the quicker, or the sooner the quicker in that respect. So I think that all of the jurisdictions understand we made that $20 million commitment. They were able to hopefully have about $1 million of that retained, and I think we would be less than responsible if we didn't say, look, we put that money out there to build this bypass, use it to build the bypass. And so
Yeah, I just want to make one last point, and then we can move on if that's what everyone wants. But the agreement was to fund phase one, and I think that's an important distinction. And there's 3 phases to this, and we've made a commitment to fund phase one. We're under budget, which is great, and I'm okay with the idea of moving forward. I think the big picture is we should do that, but I don't really feel comfortable moving forward without knowing exactly how much we've saved and what the actual debt services dollars that we could be saving had we not moved that money forward and just not borrowed it or just paid that back to ODOT. So I just think a fiscally responsible thing to do would be to know what those numbers truly are before we throw this blank check.
Yeah, Dave.
For a matter of speaking, into that
I'm going to have
phase two.
Dave address that regarding ODOT's figures and what ODOT is telling the Parkway as far as the final, what we know the funding or the savings would probably be, because they haven't got all the contract and all they don't know exactly.
Until Springbrook's done, that is their best estimate, and I can tell you that ODOT is pretty careful about estimating savings that it would be more than realistic. I think, if you put it in the context of a $200,000, what you're saving if you don't use those dollars is like the debt service on a house for the next 20 years or whatever length McMinnville did for that at that interest rate. So you can figure out what that is. It's, is it $1,000, $1,500, $1,200 a month on debt service? It's a pretty low interest rate. That those would be dollars that you wouldn't be paying out of your gas tax revenues over the next 15 years. So in a year, and the payments aren't monthly, in a year you might be saving $20,000 to $25,000 in debt service. So, I mean, that's an order of magnitude. And I'm saying that because ODOT wouldn't give me precise numbers, because until this Springbrook is done, it could turn out that there's slightly more savings, or it could turn out they may be just wrong and it may not be that much. So like all entities, they're being pretty careful about that. But that's the order of magnitude. So it's not this isn't going to build a lot of projects locally, but it will build some, no question about it. There's always a trade-off. But if you can put in $200,000 and you're the linchpin and making ODOT put in another $9.5 million into the project, and I can give you an example. I've spent most of late this morning and into the afternoon with Senator Bocus's house talking about various issues, and all of those and the others that are looking at this upcoming legislature and a bill big enough to move some big projects forward are all looking. They'd love an opportunity not to do something, because there's so many places to go. What we need to do is give them an opportunity to continue to invest in this project, and this is absolutely the ideal one. If the stars ever align, and we talked about this under our lobbying efforts, it's the legislative efforts and the efforts that Commissioner Primozic mentioned on the major highway program, where we're a high priority corridor. So this is an extraordinary opportunity, and I think there's a lot of people watching it. There's a lot of people who wished we'd dropped the ball because they'd get the money. So,
Yeah, and again, I'm not opposed to that.
Oh, I know
think
that.
it's important that we have the numbers out on the table so everyone understands exactly what's moving.
I think, Kevin, to me, the important part, and what this resolution does, is I feel confident that ODOT playing things close to the vest like they do, and they say about 10 million. Again, like Dave said, I can't say if it'll be 2 million or it'll be 17 million. We don't know, but I think the purpose of this resolution is just to say whether it be $2 million in savings, $10 million in savings, or $17 million in savings, that the local partners say whatever savings there is, that will be applied to the property acquisition. Do we know that number? And until Springbrook doesn't, we won't know that. Personally, gut feeling, what I've seen of the bids, my gut feeling, this is just gut feeling, I think it's going to come in higher than 10 million. But I have nothing to base that on because ODOT doesn't have their figures together yet.
Councilor Jeffries, thank you for calling this item out. I think this is really good discussion. I could be the only person in the room that feels as though they now have a better understanding of the funding for the bypass, but perhaps there are others that feel the same way. The confidence that I have in passing this resolution is that the money that the city of McMinnville felt comfortable borrowing and contributing has not changed. And that if Phase 1 is to come in under budget, then that's a benefit for everybody, but that there's no additional responsibility that is being put onto the city beyond what we've already obligated ourselves to. And I respect the desire to see the specific numbers, but I also understand that the thinking that a project will come in under budget and whether or not that will actually happen remains to be seen. And I feel very comfortable saying that McMinnville committed to borrow this amount of money, provide it, and that we can move forward with that.
Thank you, Remy.
Mr. Mayor,
Alan,
if I could just, because I could put a couple of numbers on these. The total project amount that's set out in the agreement was $224,102,000. That was the Phase 1 project cost. And of that, under the loan agreement, the city of McMinnville was borrowing $3,209,600, as Mr. Hagerberg mentioned. Using $10 million as a rough number of project savings, City of McMinnville's share of that would be just under $149,000. So for every 10 million saved, if it's distributed proportionally, the amount that we would not borrow would be about $149,000. Spread out at 2.7% interest could be as little as $9,000 a year in debt service savings. So if that, don't quote me on that because I'm not a finance guy, I'm not our accountant, but just running the numbers and the percentages here, 10.5 million would be about 4.6% project savings. And so if you just back that off of the city's prior commitment, that gives you a little bit better ballpark.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, David. So do we have any more comments since we have that around? Larry, do you have any comments?
No, sir.
How about you, Kelly?
No, thank
Okay, let's start. Alan, you have any comments?
Just that I support the resolution. I think it's Mr. Hageberg's come to our rescue again and educated us a little bit more, or reminded us a lot more of what we're up against here. But I don't think there's too many people that look at the new section that we're building right now, the bypass, and not coming up with the idea, well, won't that work better when there's another phase added on? I haven't driven through that part of the county and not heard that from the person that I've been driving with every single time, and I go, yes, it will work so much better. And everybody seems to agree to that, and I agree with Remy in that we've committed our funds. Why not move forward and make best use of it right now? And that's to move it forward quickly because of the pressure we're receiving from development along that area. Why not just continue on? So I'm in support of it, and I think it's going to be a big win for us in the future.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Scott?
Kevin, thank you for bringing it out of our consent agenda. We now have a little more of a feel of the dollars, but in principle, it was the right thing to do, no matter what the savings is. We committed it, as Remy indicated. So, but thank you for bringing it out of consent agenda.
You know, two things for informational items, and before we take a vote on this, I'd like to just add is, when we talk about the needs for McMinnville, the needs for Newburgh, and the needs for Dundee, we all have the same needs that drives economic development. But one of the reasons when we first started talking about this at our council several years ago, one of the reasons that McMinnville turned out to be the biggest player, what the formula worked out, is because this is much more of an economic driver to McMinnville and to West Valley, Sheridan, Willamina, everything, than it is to Newburgh. Newburgh and Dundee, it's very important, but it's also a livability issue, where companies like ADEC or other companies could locate in Newburgh and still be within that magic 45 minutes or 1 hour. I'm sure Jody could provide us some information of where you have to be next to a freight corridor. McMinnville is not in that. And so that's the first thing. I think the reason we did it maybe a little bit differently, although we also realize that Dundee and Newburgh being our neighbors and our partners, what's good for Newburgh and Dundee is good for McMinnville. What's good for McMinnville is good for Newburgh and Dundee. One of the things that I want everybody to remember is that when we first talked about putting in the bypass, we talked about the bypass, not phases of the bypass. The bypass was from a point going from Dayton, east of Dayton, to the top of Rex Hill. We got into this situation because of funding purposes where we said, okay, if we were to break this up for construction purposes, how does it make sense to break it up? And so we came up for construction phase 1, construction phase 2, and construction phase 3. 2 being the Newburgh to 99W, and 3 being from the west end of the bypass to the Dayton interchange. But I think we don't want to lose sight that we are still talking about we will not realize the total benefits until the bypass is completed. Not phase 1, not phase 1 or 2, but all 3 phases. So this, what Dave's bringing, if we have construction savings, which hopefully we'll do on phase 2, I would hope that all the jurisdictions would take that savings again and roll it right back into what we need to do with phase 3. So I want everybody to make sure that we understand that we're not talking about phase 1 of the bypass or phase 2 of the bypass for more than a construction. We are really talking about the bypass in total. So if we don't have any other comments, I will entertain a motion that we approve resolution number 2016-49.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, we have a so moved by Councilor Rudin, a second by Councilor Menke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let it show the resolution number 2016-49 has passed the council unanimously.
And Mr. Mayor, I would just point out that every vote that we've had on the funding from the local entities through this project, you know it's right because it's been unanimous every time. People have really have understood, and I just think that's an incredible statement by McMinnville and the county and the other jurisdictions and your friends, the members of the Confederated Tribes have been there unanimously right there with you all the time. So, great, thank you.
Okay, David, I'm going to have you sit right there for a minute, just in case you need, because I know since you haven't had your beverages, going back and forth may be tiring for you. So that will take us to our next thing, the joint work session with Yamhill County. So, Commission Chair, I don't know if you, since this is a joint work session, if you need to call the commissioners into formal order since it is a work session, or do you need to call yourselves into order?
No, I don't think we do. I think we're just basically we're considering this sort of crashing your party. So
you can crash our party anytime you would like.
We're going to play by your rules
And
tonight.
you can use our room anytime you
Did you hear
would
that?
like.
Laura? Okay.
So, okay, well, that being said, that takes us into our joint work session with Yamhill County, and the first item on the agenda is the Newburgh-Dundee bypass update. I know we have talked a lot about the financing issues with Resolution 2016-49, but what I'd like to do is turn it over to anybody. David, I don't want to know if you just stand, I think, being that you're our transportation chair for Yamhill County, if you want to go ahead and lead with, since it is our joint work session, with an update of what's going on.
Yes, I briefly touched on that in my earlier remarks, but and I will be repeating myself. We are at a point where ODOT is the final stage of Phase 1, being the Springbrook connection. Phase 2 has become a critical issue. Stepping back just a step, we did have one little hiccup when we had the initial connector at 219. It was going to connect, they were moving Wilsonville Road to connect at 219 adjacent or directly across from the bypass, which was, to my way of thinking, a very poor design, given the fact that Wilsonville Road would have become the default extension of the bypass. And some of you, maybe all of you, have been on Wilsonville Road. I don't think any of you would want to see that become a part of the bypass. So we did sit down, we got the jurisdictions together, we hammered out an agreement. The final agreement was about 90 minutes long, but part of Phase 2 was moving Wilsonville Road and bringing it into 219 up toward Winooski. So what we've done is that is going to happen ahead of the actual completion of the bypass Phase 2, and thus eliminating that possibility of making that the extension of the bypass. In doing that, then when we do commit to Phase 2, the bypass will continue on behind the where the hospital is. There's a lot of work being done, and Dave is very integral in that work because of this projected purchase of this piece of property that would build a significant economic tool or engine for Newburgh, and we certainly want to be supportive of them as much as they would of us, because it will be a facility, $6 million of construction, and approximately 40 family wage jobs. We don't want to push that off the table, but it is right in the middle of the right-of-way, so there's a lot of negotiating going on. I think it's important to recognize that Ken Austin of Austin Industries has just been tremendous in coming to the table, working with the Wirtz family to try and do some exchanges of land. The Park and Recreation District over there, as much as they hate to, they might have to give up somebody mentioned the other day, they can take the second hole, and that's fine with me, but the golf course may have to be altered a little bit in order to allow the bypass through there, and if that's the one they take, that's fine. But anyway, so there's a lot of moving parts to this happening, but everybody's got their focus on how critical this is to Yamhill County and the economic development of our entire valley. West Valley needs this tremendously, but as Jody has pointed out more than once, if we don't create a more rapid means of getting raw material in and finished product out, it's difficult to get people to consider McMinnville as the place they want to establish a new business or move an existing business. So we've got a lot at stake here, and we've got an opportunity with what we're doing to make this happen. Is the right-of-way purchase and the extension of Phase 1 the only issue? No, we've got significant issues. We've got the West End connector is not ideal, to say the least. But what we want to do is have a very, very focused, common voice to take to the legislature. They're going to be coming up with a transportation package in the 2017 legislature. We need to all be talking the same thing. We have got to finish Phase 2. It's just critical. And so if all of the jurisdictions, no matter what, I know in Dundee, they've got their own issues, but they're on board with this. We crafted a resolution from Parkway Committee that states that is our primary goal. And so if we're all on board, we're all connecting with any legislator that we know, that we have a relationship with, and we're speaking to them in terms of this is absolutely critical to the well-being of this county, and they need to move forward, and this is what we need to do. So, but we're at a real critical juncture here in this phasing, because we've got to have that right away, or we might as well say goodbye to any extension of that bypass. Then you will see Marion County on board, because they'll have to deal with all that traffic shooting down 219.
right.
But I don't want to send them there. I want to make a more direct route. So anyway, as far as the bypass is concerned, it is a critical piece. Dave, is there something I might have left out that you want to?
Well, no, I think it's been well covered. I just want all of you to know that the Parkway Committee and obviously all of the elected and appointed members of the Park Committee are committed to moving this project forward. And we have an extraordinary lobbyist in Michelle Jaguar of Summit Strategies. We now are in a position with the funding to be at both Salem and in Washington, D.C. We know that the Confederated Tribe and their lobbyist is going to be helping work with us, and we'll keep you apprised as it goes on. But the things that are happening are going on now as there are hearings going on all over the state. The next one is in Eugene, talking about this transportation issue, and it involves the key legislators that are going to be crafting this package and carrying it. And we're working with them on a daily basis to make sure that you don't want to not be in that package when it's written. And so that is absolutely a committed goal. And so, there's never a guarantee in legislation, or will it happen, but we're working far and wide to do that, and to have your lobbyists spend your money effectively and wisely. And so we really appreciate the continued extraordinary partnership of this project.
One thing I might add, Dave, and when you talk about everybody working on one partnership to one goal, being a member on the board of directors of the League of Oregon Cities, realizing there's probably 3-4 projects right now around the state that are significant. Everybody will admit at the LOC that the Newburgh-Dundee bypass is the #1 significant project in the state of Oregon. But one of the legislative priorities, the top legislative priority from the League of Oregon Cities, which is about 326 member cities and officials, is to ODOT and is the legislature is that you have to complete the funding in any transportation package. Any existing project that has not been completed, that funding should go to those projects before the ODOT considers taking on new projects. Because the concern of all the cities in the state of Oregon is the more projects that under pressure that ODOT decides to start, the more projects we're going to have that are never going to be completed. And we don't want to put the Newburgh-Dundee bypass into that project where it's a project that just doesn't have any, loses its momentum because there's so many other things. So that is also of the cities, that is a priority of the cities, is to complete all the major renovations. And one of the top identified one was the Newburgh-Dundee bypass for the cities. So,
Thank you.
thank you, David.
Thanks.
Okay, we have anything else, any other comments on the bypass, or anybody like to make any comments? Okay, hearing none then, let me, my tablet went to sleep, let me get it back up. Okay, hearing none, then what we will do is we will move on to our second under the joint work session with Yamhill County is the city-county street transportation improvements. And I don't know who, Martha, do you want to kick that? Who do we have planned to kick that one off? Do you? I don't see Mike here to speak on anything.
No, and
tonight.
the intent was it's just a conversation between the counselors and the commissioners.
Okay. So that being said, as the commission is aware, and I'll start this off from Yamhill County, that several of the street improvements that was passed in our bond levy actually have to do with roads that are currently maintained by the county that are basically urban streets, and they will be built to urban street standards. And at that time, the jurisdiction of those streets will be changed from the county to the city because they are actually functioning as urban streets, but they're not designated as urban streets. A good one is Hill Road. Another one's part of Old Sheridan Highway. Those are actually under the jurisdiction of the county right now. As part of our bond levy that the citizens of McMinnville passed for the improvements of Hill Road from Baker Creek Road to 2nd Street and those parts of Old Sheridan Road over the Cozine improvement and improving up 99W, once those are improved, then the city will take over. We'll have a what they call jurisdictional transfer, and those roads or those services will be transferred from Yamhill County to the city of McMinnville, and they'll become part of our city grid. So that being said, what I'd like to do is turn over to either Stan or Mary, talk about other city, maybe county road projects that will be of importance to the city.
Well, Commissioner Primizich's liaison to Public Works, and we have a very ambitious improvement plan that's going on this summer.
Yes, we, fortunately or unfortunately, with the drop in oil prices that we experienced earlier, it was possible for us to get a very, very good bid on asphalt. And so consequently, we usually make up a large list of transportation projects that we're going to work on, and then a lot of those are alternates. Well, we were fortunate enough that there are no alternates. We're doing them all. So our public works crew are working tremendously hard on a variety of different roads and streets that we are completing, either doing significant gravel upgrades, but primarily we're doing overlays on a lot of gravel roads this year, and then doing some top surface on several others. In connection with, we did move forward to convey those roads to the city of McMinnville. But just because we are such good neighbors,
Here we go.
John Phelan, our public works director, went out and mowed along Baker Creek and along Hill Road and over on Old Sheridan Road, just to make sure that we transfer those to you in
good shape,
best possible shape. But no, we do want to work very hard to make certain that there is good connectivity. As we've stated earlier, transportation is so critical to economic development, but just to the movement of our citizens around the county, and we're very aware of the obligation we have to make certain that happens. And I will say right now, if anybody ever has an issue with any county road, please don't hesitate to call me, because I know John wants to hear about it. John Phelan is our Public Works Director, and you won't find very many people who are more customer-oriented than John. We got him out of the private sector, and he's just really does care about, if you have an issue, he's going to be right out there. He doesn't talk to you on the phone. He gets in his pickup and he goes out there. He talks to you. He looks at the problem. He says, well, we can do something about this. And he does it. I mean, it's just, so we have those kind of people. It's like Mike Brandt over at our planning department. It's not a question of, well, gee, we can't do that. It's well, let's see how we can make that happen. I mean, that's the mentality. So please, if you ever run into an issue on a county road, let us know. But we will be working very closely to make sure that those projects that you're working on connect up well with what we have, and that we have some very good transition there.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think one thing that gets lost in this whole conversation, we had a long conversation about the bypass, and I think the one thing that gets lost, I think the county does a real good job on, is if you don't travel some of the county roads, some of the back roads between Newburgh and McMinnville very often, or Salem and McMinnville, the pressure on 99W between Newburgh and Dundee is basically tearing the county roads apart. The longer it is before the bypass is completed, the more money the county and the cities around the county are going to have to spend for a longer period of time trying to maintain those the county road standards. And there's some of them. If you look at the new intersections out at Keeney Road and what the county's done in some of those north of Lafayette, east of Carlton, those are what county roads should look like. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't there yet. I know Commissioner Primisich said they're getting there, but the failure to provide major transportation plans is actually eating the county road system apart. So Stan, congratulations on all the work you've done.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. It's very important to recognize that the county has almost 800 miles of road, far more than the state has, believe me, in this county, in Yamhill County, and 33 bridges. And we are working hard. We have one bridge right now that's closed. We are really close to getting the nod to get Palmer Creek repaired and reopened. DeJong is on the list to be replaced. So, but it's a large issue. And if we do have the big one that everybody's talking about, the infrastructure throughout, everything from I-5 West is supposed to fail. We want to be ahead of that curve, and we want to be able to get people around the county. And so we are going to be working really hard to make sure our roads are kept open for everybody.
I know one other thing the city's working on very strongly with ODOT, and I won't quote a price because I don't know it, but when I heard it was unbelievable, is the replacement of the 3-mile lane between McMinnville and the hospital. If ODOT is working on that, it's on the STIP now to replace, I think by 2020 now, has it been moved back to 2020, Martha? That bridge, I think we could probably build the whole west end of the bypass for what it's going to cost to replace that bridge. Replacing bridges or fixing bridges are very, very expensive. Because when you're talking about buildings to seismic standards 9 and above, it's like you can go from 6.5 to 7, and it's quite a jump. But when you go from a 6 or a 7 to a 9.5, the cost astronomically increase. So
It's almost, well, actually, it's
For-
more than double.
it's more than double. So just jumping that much. So, but I know the city does appreciate the work the county's done and the work they've done in keeping up Old Sheridan Road and those roads such as Hill Road, both north and south, that service the city. And I will be glad when the city takes those over, because technically they do operate as a urban road and not as a county road. So,
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I just want to, again, just thank the county for the work that they've done on the streets around the county, because I know in years past it hasn't really been the case, but it seems like in the last 5-6 years, it's been such a dramatic improvement in the quality of the roads. I think the one that really comes to mind in McMinnville in particular is the old Sheridan, that the change that you did on the bridge down there.
Just adding the
I
pedestrian.
know I got a lot of credit for that because it's in my ward, but I had nothing to do with it. I kept having to, when I was
But
getting
you took the
emails.
credit, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah. But just to make it, clear the air, it's amazing how what an improvement that is, because that is really, it's a really a pedestrian corridor right there. And I just saw it just today
Somebody
that
took
somebody had
out
it
so
out.
many feet of guardrail.
So,
You
good
saw
thing it's
that
made of
picture
wood and
too.
not iron, right? 'Cause someone could have gotten hurt. Anyways, it's just great to see that. And I'm going to give you a call because you said if you see any improvements that could be
Please
done.
do.
While the guy's out mowing, the south side of Hill Road on the S curve, the weeds are getting pretty high on that. So as you're coming northbound, you can't see anything coming across that bridge. And so unless it's a big box truck, you don't know it's coming.
That's between Alexandria and
And-
the Fellows,
Yeah.
right where that is.
Yeah.
corner is.
Yeah, so it's on the west side in particular, that it's just really tall. You can't see as you're approaching that
You
corner.
can't see the southbound.
And you
traffic.
usually like to
That-
wait, take
was
that one
that,
car at a time on that one.
Today, or was that very recent? Because I know they've
Yesterday.
been out moving.
Yesterday, I
Okay.
saw it yesterday
So I
too.
know, because that's on the list of
Oh, I
places
figured.
to be mowed,
Okay,
but
thank you.
I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything more to talk about transportation issues?
I just have a question, just an update on our bus system and how that's moving forward and shelters and those types of things. I don't know that we've had a report for over a year now on how that all is taking hold.
That's also one of my areas.
Okay.
Yes, we are. In fact, we're successful in receiving a grant to do an overall study of our transportation system, and especially within the city of McMinnville and the city of Newburgh, where we actually have routes that we run. We have a substantial connection to Salem, up to Tigard and Hillsborough, and the casino. So we do provide regular service to all of those entities, but within the city of McMinnville and Newburgh, we do have routes, and then we do provide service for the elderly, the handicapped, and that's a special transportation plan that we also, in fact, we are having. Please, Laura, help me. Have you got that date in front of you? I think it's the 29th?
28th.
28th. There will be a workshop. We're inviting stakeholders of our special transportation to come and share any gaps that we have in the service to them, to share any issues that they have that we might address. We do have a separate committee that is strictly dedicated to special needs, and we're going to be dealing with that on that 29th. And I got a little bit off the subject, but that's very important, and we really do care about providing those services. But the grant that we received will allow us then to do an overall scoping of what we currently have and how we can improve it, where we have shelters that we really don't need them, and where we need shelters that we don't have. One of the things that happened, Commissioner Sterrett mentioned that as we go around to these, hold these meetings in the various cities, we've been able to identify a problem that we can relatively soon fix. And that was one of the things that came up in the city of Amity. First said, yeah, the other day I saw this poor woman with her baby standing out there waiting for a bus. It's pouring rain and she had no place to stand. We now have a shelter out there. And that was Commissioner Sterrett. That became her focus for the next few days, making sure that we got a shelter out there. So we do try and be responsive. But anyway, as we complete this overall review of what we're doing, you're going to see some significant changes, going to see a lot of maps at those shelters. You're going to see, we're going to have a better website. We're going to have better signage. So we are upgrading, but we didn't want to start putting money out until we did this study to make sure that we're spending that money appropriately. So I hope that's the long answer to a short question.
I have a question, Commissioner. I know a few years ago, or maybe probably more than a few years ago at my age, there was a lot of issues that were brought about. Some of the shelters and the benches that went in the shelters were either ADA accessible or they weren't built to where they should be around parts. I've noticed driving around McMinnville specifically that it appears that there's still some shelters that don't have any seats in them at all. Some I've seen have a couple seats that are pretty wobbly. Has the city or the county lately done actually an inventory, has Public Works done an inventory of those shelters and what shelters need improvement, what shelters need work?
That's all what.
Is part of that study?
That's coming out of this study. Again, like I say, we had some issues. We hired a new transportation person, and she's doing a tremendous job, but she wanted to get this study done. That's why she wrote for the grant, and we will be tackling those, Mr. Yoder's on the commission, and we will be tackling those as soon as we get the results of that study, which should be sometime here in the next 3 to 4 months.
And Councilor Hill, just to update you, I do serve on the advisory committee, but one of the things that's happened is between the departure of the previous director and the hiring of the new one, the advisory committee kind of went defunct for about a year and a half. And we are just now getting back and getting reorganized. In fact, we have a meeting here at the end of this month in 2 weeks. And so we're just trying to get reorganized and get acquainted with the new manager of this transportation of YCTA. And so I haven't had anything to update you with because I've been in the dark too.
Well, as we talked about, any of our partners out there, we welcome them once that committee's back up and going and the new director of that, we welcome them to come here because I think we get a lot of input from constituents within our wards about transportation and thinking it as city and not county. And so having that partnership and having that flow of knowledge and information would be helpful and welcomed.
I think it's important to also mention another thing which is relatively new within the last year, and that is something that's available to all of those who are Medicaid recipients or on the Oregon Health Plan in the county, and that's the non-emergent medical transportation, which is state funds that go through the CCO, which basically just says if you need help getting to a doctor's appointment or to a medical appointment of some kind, it doesn't have to be an emergency, but the transportation is door to door, and it's pretty comprehensive. So it's been an extremely expensive program because the need was a whole lot more. The utilization was a whole lot more than they thought it was going to be. But just in case anybody's asking, in addition to dial-a-ride, you can actually get transportation to a doctor's appointment.
That's amazing.
That's great. Great news.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Laura.
I would just like to add that if you do see something wrong with the shelter that needs repair, we do have a contract with someone to make repairs or improvements in the shelters, or if there is a complaint from a constituent about the service, they can contact us. Cynthia Thompson is our transit manager. You don't need to wait for this planning process. There is a contact at the county that complaints or concerns can be voiced to. So we will address those as they come up.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Good info. Kevin?
Yes, so, just a couple comments. I've used the system pretty regularly. It's been a while since I've used it, and I'll explain why. But
The non-emergent medical ones, Kevin?
no, just the transit. So I work in Salem, and parking is a drag in Salem, and driving there is no fun. So I'm like, hey, I could just get on the bus. And if the times that it's worked out, it's been wonderful, and I've really enjoyed the trip, and just been able to read a book, and because the police usually get upset when I do that while I'm driving to Salem, so it's nice to have somebody else drive.
Go figure.
Yeah, I know. But one of the issues I've had recently, when I've tried to get on, I usually get on at, I ride my bike over to Bimart, and then I wait for the bus there. But if there's two bikes on the bus, I can't get on. And there's no place for me to lock my bike up. So there's been a couple of times where I've done that, and I've had to ride my bike all the way back home and get in my car and follow the bus all the way to Salem. So if there was an alternative to that, it used to be until recently, you could, however many bikes are on, you just get on the bus with your bike, and that was okay. But that rule's changed, and so it's made it impossible for me to because once I get to West Salem, I have to bike to my office. And the other issue too is the schedule. So it gets there. I start at 8 o'clock, and I know a lot of people do start their day at 8 o'clock, and it doesn't get me anywhere near 8 o'clock. I'm either there at like 8:40 or 8:30, and then or get there well before like at 7 o'clock or something like that. So those are just a couple of the issues that I saw. As that vehicle is servicing this county to get people who might be working elsewhere, it's not getting you where you need to be at a time where you can actually start your job at 8 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you.
Senator, those kind of things, are those the kind of things they look at as part of this study that they're doing?
That will be a part of it, but, these incidents like somebody who needs to be at a certain place, looking at, is there another alternative? I don't know, but these are the kinds of issues that when we're out talking to people, we can go back and see, can we, is there something we can do about that right away? And
I've raised these with the previous director many times, and I never once got a response back. So I'm glad we've hired a new director. Sounds like things are in the right track.
I will personally see that you get an answer one way or another. It may not be the one you want, but it'll be an answer.
Even that would be an improvement. So that'd be good.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Do we have anything more to cover on transportation or street transportation? Does anybody in the audience have any question for either the commissioners or the city or comments on the street and transportation improvements? If not, what I think we'll do is we will take off this agenda. We'll take the homeless update off, since we did do that at the town hall session, unless somebody specifically who was not here earlier has any questions or comments regarding the homeless update. Okay, come on up, Elise.
I'm Elise Huey. I'm the Executive Director for the Housing Authority, and I just want to make a couple comments. I didn't earlier because I didn't think it was the time, but
You're welcome to make them now.
Good. I wanted to make a couple updates on what we're doing locally for some of the homeless issues. Like Kathy said, we have a big need for the folks that are in front of the church with the level of services needed, and so even with the Gospel Rescue Mission, we saw a need that, there's going to be some gaps. And there's going to be people that can't be served at the mission. And so, along with some community organizations, so Provoking Hope is a big one that currently offers mentorship, and they will do street outreach. So that's somebody to keep in mind if somebody is in need of some hand-holding and working through the different services. So we do have that. I heard that earlier. And then, so Provoking Hope, the Housing Authority, YCAP, the CCO, and Health and Human Services have a community impact team that goes out on a regular basis to do street outreach, so that you have a multidisciplinary team that's working together to try to meet with the folks. Of course, they've got to want to get help, but they have been successful, getting a few people off the streets. There was one lady that actually handed over her heroin needle when they talked to her, and then the next day entered treatment. So we have some really good success stories that have come out of that community impact team. So that's one of the things that's being done. If you have not been to one of the Peace and Community Together events, which is this Thursday would be the third Thursday. Sorry, I was on vacation last week and I'm in training this week, so I'm a little off on my dates. Somebody help me out. So anyway, this Thursday and every Thursday that time of the month.
This Thursday is going to be
The second Thursday, okay, thank you. Every second Thursday from 5 to 7 at Co-op Ministries, Peace and Community Together, and it's a joint effort by Hope on the Hill, Provoking Hope, Compass Center, which Remy was referring to, which is the one stop, hopefully, that we'll have for services in the future, the Housing Authority, and Co-op Ministries. We've gotten together, and so we have this event, and it's really an outreach event, so everybody gets fed that comes to the event, but it's to really increase the awareness of homelessness in our community. So we have people that come from the public, and there's always live entertainment, and they come from the public, and they're able to sit down with a homeless neighbor and just talk to them. And so we have service providers that are there, but they're not there in a formal capacity. So if I sit down and talk to somebody, they don't necessarily know I'm from the Housing Authority, but if I hear a housing issue come up, I can go, and then provide them some resources, because I always carry them with me. So it's just another way that we're providing resources to our community members that are in need. I think one thing that we need to keep in mind is that our downtown visible population is just a very small example of our overall population. And what we have found in the past is about 40% of what we count at the homeless count in January is children under the age of 18. So, in addition to outreaching to that population through the various efforts, the population that is on the street takes up a lot of resources, because those folks are in and out of emergency rooms, in and out of the jails, and those kind of things. One thing the Housing Authority has done is we have dedications of housing vouchers set aside for, we work with different entities with those, and so we can get referrals from YCAP, from Yamhill County Corrections, from Yamhill County Health and Human Services, from Yamhill County Veterans, and then we have a program with DHS for family unification, and so those folks can refer folks to us to get up on the list for vouchers, so that they have a priority, so that there are situations where we don't have to have people in corrections being released onto the streets. If they have the case management component on their side, then we'll help prioritize a voucher for them. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Another exciting thing that we have had happen recently is we were awarded 15 VASH vouchers, and what those are is it's a relationship between the Department of Housing and Urban Development and Department of Veterans Affairs. So we've been asking for them for years, and we finally, you can't apply for them, you have to be asked to apply for them. And we were finally asked, and we applied, and we got 15, so we'll be rolling out that program this fall. And it's for homeless vets. And the referrals actually for that program will be coming from the Portland VA Medical Center. So if you know of anybody that might be a homeless veteran, if they go touch base with the Portland VA Medical Center, they can get referred back for that program. And that'll be 15 specifically for that population. So I just wanted to make you aware of all those things that are going on for our homeless populations.
Okay, any questions for Elise at all? Larry? Kelly?
Just 15 vouchers for homeless veterans?
Well, we already have the set aside, the fast track program with Yamhill County veterans, that we've already, I think we're over 20 vouchers for that program, because we hadn't gotten the VASH vouchers.
20 vouchers a month, or 20 vouchers?
It's 15 vouchers for the first year, and it depends on what the allocation is from, the federal government, because they've said that program's going away, and then they funded it again, and apparently we're in this last funding cycle. So it just depends. Once you have a program, sometimes you get more vouchers, but we were excited because it's 15 vouchers our community didn't have previously.
True, that is nice.
So
for my explanation, those vouchers, those 15 vouchers, the vouchers we have now, the 15 VASH vouchers, what does a voucher actually cover?
Yeah, what does
and
it
then
get
for
us?
what period of time?
Oh, okay. So there are Section 8 vouchers. It's just a specialized program within the Section 8 program. And so there is no time limit once somebody gets a voucher. So basically, the amount of the voucher subsidy changes with the person's income. So if they come in at zero income, they don't have to pay anything. So it's 30% of their income that they pay, and then we subsidize the differential to the private landlord. So it's a private landlord program. We put almost $9 million back into our local economy every year through this program. And there's, most of our people that are served through this program are elderly or disabled, or people, we do have some people that are working minimum wage jobs, and hopefully that changes a little bit with the minimum wage increase, but, just people struggling to get by. And so it can last as long as they're eligible for the program. And we actually have a home ownership component off of that too, where people, once they show that they're successful in the rental market, can actually use that voucher to help them purchase a home. So we're trying to move people to self-sufficiency.
Elise, one of the problems with the Section 8 vouchers is not the lack of voucher, but lack of
Affordable
units
housing.
once they have that. So having a voucher might not necessarily mean they're going to get
Yeah, we're finding that people are having a problem finding units. We have a tight rental market. Our voucher payment standards, which is the amount that people can afford, have increased recently quite greatly, and so it allows them a little more spending power. Again, there's not as many units on the ground. It's interesting because we have a training this week, and it's for the Housing Choice Voucher executive management portion. And my only point here is there's people there from around the nation, from Hawaii, from Nevada, from California, Florida. The problem is nationwide. It's not just locally. It's not just in Oregon. We're all having a hard time utilizing vouchers. So definitely, like Stan was talking, Commissioner Primovich was talking about, the need to look at our land use laws at every level to see if we can free up land so that we can build affordable housing. That is a big need, because we need to get more affordable units on the ground, not just, market rate, nice high-end units. We need to really get more affordable units on the ground.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, Commissioners, if you're aware, but in response to both homelessness and the affordable housing crisis that McMinnville finds itself in, we, as a council, took on a series of educational seminars presented by the leaders in the service communities that are servicing the homeless and low-income populations. And then the result of that was the establishment of the McMinnville Affordable Housing Task Force, and that came into effect in May. There was a resolution creating that task force in May, and that task force meets monthly and has short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. And the idea is that in the very immediate, we're going to start putting policy in place that will improve the affordable housing market in McMinnville.
Great. When do you guys meet?
We meet the second Wednesday of every month, right?
Okay.
It's tomorrow.
You're asking the wrong person.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Remy. And we're glad you're serving on that committee, because definitely all know how critical and vital it is for, I say, the whole nation. It just isn't a city issue. It's not a county issue. It's a whole nation issue. So, if we don't have any more of that, that'll take us to our last point in our joint session. That's the joint economic development efforts. I know, Stan, if I'm not mistaken, you have economic development too?
Yes.
Is that true?
We needed to talk about Health and Human Services, because that's Mary's.
Gee, I guess when you're chair, you can do things like that.
We do distribute these responsibilities across the board, but you just happen to pick the ones that I have right now, liaison to. But yeah, what you have, I know Jody put in front of you what she's doing here in McMinnville. It's quite obvious that one of the economic drivers for Yamhill County is what takes place in the city of McMinnville, because this is where your greatest population is. But we have a lot of things going on throughout the county to attempt to drive economic development. And I mentioned earlier I convened a meeting here a couple of weeks ago to develop a steering committee that, and Jody is serving on that. We've got Rural Development Initiative, Gary Stewart who's on that. We've got people from Newburgh, Dayton, Sheridan. We're trying to, I know Jody at the behest of the county 3 years ago spent a lot of time with 80 of our residents. Was it 5 years ago, Laura? Thank you. Had 80 people on this committee, and they met quite often over the course of a year and developed what they called the Grow Report. And a lot of those things have been done, but a lot of them have not. And this committee is going to be reviewing that, along with a lot of new criteria for reaching out to get dollars. One of the problems we have in Yamhill County is we don't have any land or buildings. What do we have? One building in the county, Jody, that is adequate to go out and shop?
Well, we have, there's two large facilities in Sheridan. There's quite a bit of activity around that. And then in McMinnville, we have very limited facilities that are ready to go. There's one facility out on the Evergreen campus, the corporate side, that's still mired in a bit of legal issues. And we have some very small facilities in the industrial park. I think today you heard about there's going to be some new development in the industrial park based on a company that you're supporting with that effort. But yes, we have limited capacity with buildings, and we have 3 large lots in McMinnville. One is shovel ready, and then there's smaller lots throughout the county.
So again, when we're out trying to bring people to the county, we're very hampered by available land. Again, we get back to land use, and buildings that are available for move-in. So that's an issue that we're going to be working with very diligently to see if we can improve that. But as I mentioned earlier, the 3 primary issues that came out of our initial meeting, what can we do to improve the outlook for economic development in Yamhill County? Transportation, affordable housing, and workforce development. Transportation, obviously, getting goods and services in and out. Affordable housing, if a company's going to move their plant here or expand here, they have to have a place for their workers to live, and it's difficult any place anymore because there just aren't a lot of things that fit. What used to be a family wage job is changing rapidly because of the cost of housing. So, but we're going to be tackling these. I'm going to be at a meeting in August. USDA, and again, all these different bodies have significant dollars to spend. You just have to know where they are and how to go get them. So I'm going to be meeting with the USDA down in North Bend in a couple of weeks. They've got some significant dollars to spend on economic development programs for rural areas. That's where the focus is, rural development. So I'm hoping to have much better information by the time I get back from there. Also, a thing that is of significance to us and anybody who used to get tremendous revenue from forest harvest. I'll be tomorrow. I go down to Roseburg to meet with representatives from Oregon Forests and from BLM. Yamhill County was one of the counties who joined with the ONC counties in a lawsuit against BLM because of their non-management of BLM lands, and it's a significant problem. Counties 10 years ago got $190 million from BLM from harvest. Last year, that was 12 million. We can't afford to do the job we're asked to do when the federal government owns 60% of the forest land in the state of Oregon, and they represent 14% of the harvest in the state of Oregon. So it's a significant issue. So it will help if we can get some of those dollars. It will provide us with dollars to do a lot of the things that we as a county government are supposed to be doing. And so you can't talk about economic development without talking about every facet of what we do. Our roads, even the issue of getting buses that get people to where they need to be when they need to be there. I'm also the liaison to veterans, and I was up at the VA hospital a few weeks ago because we have veterans here that are handicapped. They need special services, and they'll have an appointment at the hospital at 7 in the morning, but the van that they send from the hospital to pick them up doesn't get here till 10 in the morning. So if we put them on a bus, they've got a 2.5-hour ride with a lot of transfers, and this is pretty difficult. So these are issues, there are a lot of things that we create our own problems by not being aware. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is bring a greater awareness to things that, just like this issue with you getting down there and not having a place to put your bike, or if that's our morning run to Salem, why can't it be scheduled at a time that is a normal start of the workday time? I don't know that answer right now, but that's the first time the issue's been brought forward. I'm going to find out. But it's, a lot of things are just a lack of common sense in approaching solutions. So again, we are doing a lot. Probably if we had a couple more Jodys in the county, we'd be doing a lot more. But we look to her for a lot of guidance because she's very involved. But thank you for what you do, and the county's role in economic development is primarily opening doors, knocking down a few walls if possible, and just like we did today. I'm very excited about the 4 grants that we were able to fund for $164,000, that I think the return on that investment is going to be significant, and the jobs that those dollars will create bring in a lot of taxes, and that's important for all of us because that's how we can afford to provide these other services.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commission Chair, do you have anything else to add on economic development or anything?
No, I think, as Commissioner Primozic said, and I want to wrap up because I know everybody's anxious to probably get on the road, is that economic development pretty much hits every aspect of what the county does. And if you don't have a workforce, and if you don't have people who are up to being able to be employable, one of the focuses of Health and Human Services this year is secure respite care and making sure that people who are chronically mentally ill are going to have a facility within the area to go to without having to be sent out of the area or to a state hospital. So there are so many different approaches to getting people employable, and I have to say that our Health and Human Services Department is handling it and tackling it from every area. So something to be excited about. It's going on.
May I make something
Sure.
in addition to that? So I recently did a project with the Alzheimer's Society and the AARP, and they did a study about just the respite, how important that is. People who are taking care of the elderly, they're not able to work and make an income doing anything else, and so it's significant amount of money that's being taken out of the economy to have people stay home and to treat and take care of their loved ones without any other assistance. So if we can get them help, they can then go back in the workforce, and it just improves the economy that much more. So I know that the Alzheimer's Society has a statistic about it. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was astounding how much money is is being lost through that kind of care.
Thank you. You know, since we've been here for about 2.5 hours, I knew we were going to have a guest from SEDCOR also. They were unable to make it, and Jody and I talked a little bit, and I was going to have Jody do a little presentation, talk a little bit about the relationship with SEDCOR, but being that we've been here about 2.5 hours now, I would like to bring up, and Jody's going to send it to the city staff to make sure all the counselors get it. Jody did bring with us tonight basically what she gave out at the council meeting, but the table on the back, the MEDP 2016 Retention and Recruitment Activity Report, has been updated as of a 7/11, and has some really updated figures on that table, on especially as far as the total CapEx. And so what I've asked Jody to do is get that to staff, and so the staff can send that out to all the counselors, so we will have a list. And if you have your old one and compare it, you will see it's quite substantial. And I think one of the last things is economic development I do want to bring up is I just want to make it very sure that the commissioners know that they can't take Jody from us, no matter as much as they would like to, that she is chained to her office and chained to her chair.
I do recognize that. I did want to thank you for mentioning SEDCOR. This county does have a contract with SEDCOR to assist in bringing players to the table to see if we can't bring some businesses here. And Jody worked very, very closely with AJ. We did get an enterprise zone created in the West Valley for the purpose of helping to develop that, and that was done with the help of SEDCOR. They are really great partners, and they are working hard to get some exposure for Yamhill County. Again, one of the problems is facilities. If you do get somebody interested, what do you have to offer? And that's where we are really going to start focusing our efforts to be able to give them the right answer.
Thank you, Stan. I think economic development, like homeless, like transportation, like anything else we talked about, economic development, there's so many different partners that are involved in economic development in Yamhill County, and I don't want anybody in the audience to forget that even though Jody is actually the executive director of MEDP, McMinnville Economic Development Partnership, economic development is critical to the whole county, whether it be Yamhill County, whether it be the city of McMinnville, whether the city of Newburgh, or even the small rural cities like Sheridan, Willamina, Amity. I think that's one of those partnerships that we need to continue to build on from an economic development and make sure that all the players, the cities, the counties, are on the same track, because what's good for McMinnville is good for the other cities, and is good for the county. What's good for the county is good for McMinnville and the other cities. So I think that's another partnership that I think it's started taking the right direction over the next few years. I'd like to see that stepped up and have a more robust relationship of all the players in the county for economic development. So Stan, I thank you very much for your comments on that. Is there anybody else who would like to say anything tonight on anything we covered in our joint session? If not, counselors, we only have our advice and information items left, but I think we can do those, and being the fact that we have been here since 6 p.m. and it's now 8:30, if nobody has anything else to come in front of us, and I'll ask the city manager if she has anything else to bring up.
Nothing.
Okay. Is there anything else, Martha? You, Rose, you got everything out regarding the LOC conference to everybody, and Martha, I think, and Martha, you put your email out regarding the attendance at the LOC conference. And out of town, since it is in Salem, I would encourage all the counselors that can, if they can get even over there for 2 of the days or a day. Last year, we had a very good turnout at the LOC conference in Bend. This year, we're fortunate because it's in Salem, downtown Salem, is that as many counselors as possible attend, look at the agenda, and attend some of the LOC sessions, because that's where you really get to talk to people from other cities, other city councils, other committees with the city, and really learn about how other cities are doing things. So if we don't have anything else, meeting adjourned.
Just like that.
I forgot to plug this. I kept putting this in. I kept plugging the battery into low power because I forgot to plug it in today.
Got our floors in today.
I like my eyes much better, and I like the surface.
I haven't met with her yet.
Yeah. We met her last year.